guys, welcome back to the EPSI chats. It's been a while, we've taken a break, but here we are, we're back, where we talk about all issues, equality, transformation in our institution and beyond, okay? Today is episode 5. We have a special guest from the Center for Women and Gender Studies. No, don't look down. Don't look down. We mustn't be down. It's Monday, but no, not with the downers. We have Qhama Noveve. She's a researcher in the Center for Women and Gender Studies, and she's going to unpack something very special for us. You know, August is Women's Month, so our episode today is in celebration of Women's Month. The topic for today is drowning voices. Kind of like how we feel right now. We're going through a lot. So drowning voices, African feminism, and the role in the South African context. So welcome, Qhama. Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Thank you for the invitation, firstly. It's good to be here, although of course we are tired. We're here. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're happy that you are here. We're happy that you spend. We're always like, ETP, come on, Center, come, do things with us. Don't leave us on the back burner there. Like, take us with you, hold our hands, and let's do stuff together. Let's do amazing stuff. So I think that's why we're pretty excited that this is something that we're collaborating on today, and hopefully in the future we'll do some scholarly work as well, because we are scholars, we are researchers, so hopefully, I know this is your line of work.
Yes.
It's not particularly my line of research, but I am passionate about it all the same, but so yeah, hoping that in the future we can have something special coming out. Nice. Okay, so we're going to get straight to why we're here, what we want to discuss, what our questions are, and yeah, let's unpack that. So we've spoken about how the topic is about African feminism, and I think there's those of us that are sitting back and like, African feminism, what is this? Where is this coming from? So I think for me, and for, I guess, speaking for everybody else that's listening, what is African feminism, and what's the difference, or is there a difference with feminism as we understand it? So if I say I'm a feminist, is there a difference if I say I'm an African feminist? Like, what's the distinction?
Okay, I think this is possibly maybe a question that is asked by many people in our context. And we must remember that the development of the feminist movement back in the 80s and the 90s and well, the 70s actually gave birth to different strands of feminism, and the main debate emanated from the fact that with feminism, particularly the one that develops in the West and Europe, really doesn't speak to the challenges of racialized women, black women, Asian women, for instance. We have what's this transnational feminism, which is quite popular in Asia and in the Asian diaspora. There's also black feminist thought, which is developed in America with the African American woman. But what African feminism is, it speaks to the challenges of African women, or women who identify as Africans, and also African women in the diaspora. So you don't really have to be located in Africa to identify as an African feminist. And it takes into account processes of racialization, colonization in the continent, particularly the South African feminism now, which takes into account apartheid, as well as settler colonialism in this particular context. So it also sort of draws on intersectionality as well. I think it's one of the greatest treasures of feminist theory, is the school of intersectionality. It's been adopted. It's quite a flexible theoretical framework. It sort of fits into different types of feminisms. But even within the continent, people don't really agree what African feminism really is. That's why now there is things like womanism.
Right, wow.
Yeah, so it's born out of these different traditional, it speaks to different concerns regarding women in society. But I think African feminism, what people think, well, what I've been reading the discourse online, discourse on social media is that, oh my God, where's the feminist brigade? Oh, they're so toxic, this and that. I think it is the feminist movement has been usurped by people, and they hide behind feminism while they spew toxicity.
Right, okay.
Because, well, I guess it's because it's a well-known term that no, I'm a feminist, but there are people who claim to be feminists but don't do feminist things. For instance, there are people that say they're feminists but they're actually toxic.
Right.
Like, they are very cruel people. And that's not what feminism is about, and it's for everybody as well, even men, racialized men in particular, black men, because we're all fighting the same struggle, right? We're all black people. However, with black men, if they don't start to accept that they are directly benefiting from a patriarchal system, then it means that we're just on our own.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that really unpacks a lot, because I was going to ask you a follow-up question of, is it ideological, is it about geography, is it because I'm in Africa that automatically makes me an African feminist? And you've kind of unpacked that you can even be in the diaspora and still be regarded as an African feminist. But I think also for the lay person, I think you may, in terms of your practices, as you said, it's about your way of living, and your practices, what your core values that will then unpack you as an African feminist. So just like to draw a model, you've also said something so interesting, the fact that there isn't a one size fits all for this is the stamp of what African feminism is. It's very broad. So just like to bring it like into a little like a box, a simpler context, if I wanted to know whether I'm an African feminist or not, you've also spoke about intersectionality between gender as well, that you can be a man and an African feminist. So how do I sort of define myself as an African feminist? How do I know?
Okay, I think one of the core values of African feminism, or feminist theory in general, is consciousness. But unfortunately, consciousness as awareness is usually not enough for people to sort of live that type of life. But I think being an African feminist, particularly, let me just make an example in the academy. It's a Eurocentric environment. It's a masculinist, patriarchal environment. And Sylvia Tamale once wrote and said, we are being called bitches of the academy. And that goes part and parcel of the othering of these systems of oppression that we are navigating. But what I can say to people, if you identify yourself as a feminist, I'm not going to lay down prescriptions for this is what you know, this is how you know. But I think you should understand that, one, there are systems of oppression that exist in the society. Number two, being a woman puts you in a particular social position or location in a particular society. Number three is that you experience things differently from people that are different than you. Let's say if you are a black woman, for instance, the fact that you're a woman, the fact that you are black, and possibly middle class, or if you're a poor woman, all of that will affect your experience when you get in contact with the system. Whatever system that is, be it capitalism, there's going to be those factors that are going to come into play. Be it higher education, you're going to get some other experience. I'm not saying that it's going to be all bad, but later on, or during the course of you interacting with the system or those institutions, then you're going to get a particular result. I'm not prescribing it to say this is what you're going to get, but you need to understand that the social structures, the social institutions, we navigate around all of them, and the way that we experience them will be dependent on where you are, your social location.
Right, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think now with the discussion that you've given us about consciousness, it sort of flows into the other question that I wanted to ask, which is the pillars of feminism, and particularly African feminism. So you've spoken about how we need to be conscious about the fact that there are systems of oppression. You can't be oblivious to that. And you've also spoken about the fact that based on the intersectionality between you being female and you being, for instance, a black female, you need to understand that there is some sort of systemic sort of like pressures that will come with that, depending also with where you find yourself. If you are, let's say, institutions of higher learning, if you're educated, if you're uneducated, if you're in the rural areas, if you're in the urban areas, there are dynamics that are associated with that. So apart from those, are there any additional pillars that...
Yes, for instance, standpoint, very important in feminism as one of its theoretical or epistemological grounding is that the experience of the woman counts as knowledge, right? So if you experience something, we can be in the same situation but experience things differently.
Right.
You get me? So experience counts as knowledge. Right? And number two is that it means some form of intellectual humility and reflexivity as well, to also understand your own privilege as a person in the society, particularly us intellectuals and researchers within institutions like the university. It's not to say, let's say, we're both black women and we're studying black women, not to say that we're the same as those black women that we're studying, because we're going into these communities and we have this advantage of having this intellectual capital and linguistic capital of the academy and the knowledge that we have acquired throughout the years, but those people don't have that. So we need to also think about that. But I think doing feminist research is also about, you know, well, I'm just going to make an example about myself. That while I'm doing my research now, doing my field work, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm a mother to a 4-year-old. I have a partner at home. I'm all these things. And I feel like my reproductive work, the domestic work that I perform outside of my workplace doesn't really count. Doesn't even count as work, right? But then I don't stop being all those things when I go home, when I go into the university, wherever I am. I don't stop being there. And I think that's the injustice that is there in the institutions, that we are now held to the same standard with people that don't really have the same challenges that we do. And it all stems from the same system. So I think those are one of the things that the reproductive labor, the domestic labor, that should actually count as work. The fact that I'm a woman and this type of work must stick to my body. Like, even with the types of work that women do in the academy, it's always teaching and administration, things that don't really count. When you really think about the money, the actual money, things that count, that bring in cash into the university, it must be done by other people, and it's female bodies.
Right.
And look at the streets when you go to Government here in PE in the morning, drive there in the morning. You see it's women cleaning the streets. The dirt sticks to us no matter where we are. So it's just like in the academy. We are doing the dirty work, the cleaning work, the emotional work of interacting with students, the back-breaking work of marking, while our counterparts are on research leave, or doing more important things, going to conferences, doing whatever that is rewarded or that counts. So we need to look at those dynamics as to the people that are occupying administrative and teaching labor. Who are those people? It's us, women, which is really not fair, because we really don't have time to do the research, and you have to go home also to go do some other type of work. So those are part of the struggles, the feminist struggles that we have as African feminists within the academy. I mean, it's been a system that has been there for the longest of times. A lot of people have, you know, come in and contributed to making conditions a little bit better. It also goes back to memory and history. Women first get erased from memory and then history. Because who gets to write the history? It's patriarchal cultures. Masculine people, males, that write the history in the history books, and we are silenced and we just disappear. That's why we remember our namesake, Nelson Mandela, but we don't remember William Carey. We don't remember we do remember Winnie, but you know, she had to do quite a lot to come back into the spotlight.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. We knew her as a partner too great.
You know,
yeah.
and that's the toxic thing about it. Women are not just remembered for their own leadership, their own achievements, their own work. It's always in relation to someone. So it speaks to really that paternalistic relationship that is unequal.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I think especially when you brought it back home in terms of all the hats that you wear, and unfortunately institutionally, you being a researcher and being an academic, those, as you say, those hats don't count. So even if you look at it in terms of the leave that you'll be granted, you can't actually bring up those hats and say, okay, now I have a deadline to complete my research by this time. I cannot then tender my other hats as a reason for why 3 years is not enough to complete a doctorate, for instance. 3 years is what is on the system, regardless of whatever else, whatever type of hats you play, and that is what it is. It's regardless of your family, whether you're funded or not. And if we look at, as you said, the stats of who then has the money to go to that level of attaining knowledge, as you said, it becomes quite interesting, which is why even if we look at it in this space, the academic space, it's dominated by men. It's not dominated by us, not because we don't have the capability, but as you said, our other factors, our other hats, our other work is not considered. So if you now have to drop out because of those other hats, well, unfortunately, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think also that's how the system usually uses that to justify why to say, no, we can't give that to women because, well, you know, women don't publish, women are lazy, women don't do this, women can't attend conferences. It's not that we're not interested, but it's usually those particular reasons are used to justify why we can't give Adelaide this opportunity because, well, she's not publishing, she's lazy, she's always coming up with an excuse, she drags her feet, all of that. So they use the advantage of the system gives them to justify why you can't get that particular opportunity. But I think in the long term, women do literally all the work. You give birth to a child, or you raise a child, or you raise your siblings. That's social reproduction. Those people are going to be active members of the society. They're going to form a workforce off your back, and yet you're not getting credit for that.
Sure.
So, you know, that's how unfair the system is. But let's look at also how discourse plays a role, or ideas play a role in how people come to know certain things. I was actually reading yesterday a piece by Patricia Hill Collins, and she says, ideas inform how people know certain things. For instance, there's the strong black woman stereotype that, oh, no, strong black woman, like you can throw anything at her. Like,
she can take it.
She can take it. It's
made of steel. Yeah.
Yes, made of steel. And yet, when you reach the point of, I am so angry, I can't take this anymore, then they say, oh, look at her, she's uncivil, she's an angry black woman, she's this, she's that. But can you see the processes of dehumanization, that you are not expected to be a human being, you're not expected to feel emotion, you're not expected to be tired, you're not expected to be angry. It's just like racism.
Right.
Like racism, people will, you know, you suffer micro assaults in the name of, oh, it's part of the job, in your workplace all day. And then when you go crazy, the day that you say, you know what, this is enough, they say, no, she's crazy, she's mental.
Look,
she's
we told you that these ones.
Exactly. So it's those neoliberal incivilities, or ideas of incivility, that she's not a civil person, that is so unprofessional, all this, that. So can you see the processes of dehumanization that go on inside the institutions? And I think it's a particular form of cruelty because you subject people to these particular conditions. And what's worse about it is that it's that ultra objective power that you can't see it, but it's there.
Right, yeah.
You just cannot see it. You can't say it's this person. You can't. It doesn't have a face. You understand? It's not like direct violence.
Yeah.
Of,
It's subtle, but you still feel it.
You feel it, but you don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
But it's there, but you don't know where it's coming from. But things like sexual harassment, for instance, or there's been murders on campuses not so long ago. On the 6th of June at George campus, there was a murder that happened there. Those forms of direct violence and the ways in which institutions of higher learning are responding to those types of violences is direct violence, it's cruelty. Yeah. Because people are going to say, oh, but the university has nothing to do with that. It was just an individual act, an isolated incident, Or maybe they're going to say, no, it's a psychological issue. Maybe there was some form of stress in the relationship, something happened. Well, he's gone to jail now, so we don't have a problem anymore. Yeah. Until the next time.
Back to business as usual.
Yes, until the next time we hear something of this nature happen. So I think there's a lack of a systematic way of dealing with this, and unfortunately it's confronting the truth. And sometimes the way to heal is to actually see things the way that they are. Right. That's the way we heal. That's the way we move forward. And unfortunately we are in a situation whereby you pay a cost for seeing things as they are.
Yeah, no, definitely. You're out of space. If you want to see things too, you're out. Yeah. So yeah, no, you are right about that, and I think that then brings us to a lot of the debates that are there, the arguments that this whole concept, this that we're sitting here to discuss, this African feminism, you're talking about now the South African context. We know the violence in South Africa is alarming. The rates of GBVF are just skyrocketing by the year. So if we were to compare the stats of this year and last year, it's crazy. Children, the murders of children, femicide, just everything. But then there's this debate, this argument that this whole concept of African feminism or feminism in the South African context is not even African to begin with. You guys have kind of borrowed this from a Western ideology and just thought, okay, now it also fits us. What's your response to that?
I think people always say, it's just like how people always say same-sex relationships are un-African.
Yes. Oh, that one is nice. Yes.
Like, for me, that is just like, okay. But anyway, what is un-African is patriarchy. Right. That is what is un-African, right? Because I feel like from the communal values that we've had before colonization, because it seems like people think that Africa started
with colonization. Like we start counting from there, or we start counting. Yeah, or we start counting from 1994. So we had nothing within that time. Yeah,
nothing was happening. There was nothing existing here, and I think that is the type of lie that racists try to perpetuate. That there was nothing before we got here. We actually discovered you. So I think it's part of those that epistemic erasure that they try to perpetuate. But back to this question now of saying feminism is un-African. Okay, well, it's the same thing that they say. Same-sex relationships are un-African. I mean, there's been same-sex relationships in Africa for the longest of times, even before the colonial encounter. And it is that particular event of the colonial encounter that shifted everything and that fused this hybridity and what's this migration as well, globalization. All these things have altered our social relations. But to say that what's the same-sex relationships are un-African. I dispute that, but people have a right to their own opinion.
Yeah.
It's just like to say, is Marxism African? And people claim to be Marxists. They're like, oh, we are, we are for communism, we're socialists, and we, believe in the values of Karl Marx and his theory and his ideology. But is Karl Marx African?
Yeah.
So people can't really come to us with that.
Yeah. Why can't we actually use theories and principles that belong to us, that are African, that stem in? That's something very interesting, because now you're bringing up like education, how we're educated, because now,
I think people, pick and choose what it is that is African to them and what's not. And African women have been doing feminism before we even named it feminism.
I think that's the issue.
Fine.
You can say maybe the term that we've used, maybe we borrowed that. But contextually,
we've been doing that for the longest of times. Feminism means friendship, means sisterhood in the genuine terms of it. That's why in family constitution, like a family in Africa is not necessarily a nuclear family.
Yes.
It's not a mother, father, and a baby, or children.
Yeah.
It's the children of your sister, your aunt,
yes.
everybody's your grandmother, whoever. Do you understand? So it was those values that for a child to be my child, it can be my sister's child, my cousin's child, but I can raise that child to be my child. It's just like feminism or friendship. Friendship is the core of feminism, because if you are my friend, if you are my sister, then I can raise your child. Yeah. You understand? So we need to go back to that and having a community, a sense of community. That's how we all heal. This reminds me of Doza Teshangi and the book and the play that was on Broadway for colored girls. Yes, that. Now that is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about feminism, community. Yeah. We can all come as different women, 3, 4 different women, but tell our stories, come with different experiences, but what comes out of that is healing, because there's a sense of belonging, some form of citizenship. It's so painful to be in South Africa and be born in South Africa, but still be stateless. Because you are stateless as a black woman, you are stateless. Your citizenship is dependent on how much respect people give you, or whatever someone gives to you. It's not about being a human being. It's about states of being that are settler colonial in nature. That if I'm living my life as a person that is in a relationship, for instance, with another woman, like I'm dehumanized, that I'm no longer a human being. I'm no longer even South African or even African. I'm called all different types of names. I'm excluded from the society. Yeah. So with race, class, and gender, sexuality, even ageism now.
Yeah. No. That I think this has become so interesting for us, because I think before it was you did your research in like your 30s, your 40s. Now you're coming into this space as a young researcher, and it's like, no, please, there's nothing that you have. I've had those encounters where you walk into a room and it's like, no, please. The adults are speaking now. Sit and listen.
I think with ageism as well, I was just having a class with my first years, and I said, why is it so difficult for you guys to imagine your parents having sexual intercourse? And they're like, oh no, it's not. I'm like, guys, honestly, old people are people.
Practically, I mean,
old people are people. They also have desire. It's just like this, these family dynamics of, when the mother grows old, maybe the husband passed away earlier on, and then the kids are older, they're out of the house, the mom is sitting there with an empty nest. Yeah. She can't now have a companion, because the children are going to be having all sorts of problems or some form of weird feelings towards this whole thing. But what I always ask is, it's always the woman that must face that type of challenge. Because a man can bring in another wife tomorrow, or can marry someone else next year. Nobody is going to.
Or even within that, like polygamy is completely acceptable. It makes sense. Talk about polyandry and people are like, what? What is that? What are you talking like? Why? Why do you need that? It's like, this woman has a problem.
Exactly.
Why does she need all of it? But if it's meant like, I mean, obviously, people will even quote for you and be like, it's been like that since time immemorial, like, you know, so why not?
I think, so people need to understand those types of issues, like why is it that we are the people that are being policed? With ageism, there's also a form of dehumanization as well in that process, because we're expecting older women to not have desire.
Right.
So even with like this whole policy of, for instance, the NRF, the NRF says that you cannot be part of particular programs, developmental programs, if you're over the age of 35.
Yeah, you actually can't even get funding, like PhD funding, if you're over 35. Yeah, no, I have a friend who had that particular problem because she's 40 doing a PhD now, and she was like, I don't know what to do, like where do I get funding? And now, now I have to scramble because I'm kind of considered, you should have gotten this thing by now. Like, why are you,
Exactly, and there's the biological clock for women.
Yes.
You get married quite earlier on in your life, and you start having children, and you're working, and you really don't have time to, pursue full-time study because your children are still toddlers or they're still very young. By the time you're 40, the time comes where you think, okay, let me go for further study, but by that time, no one's going to fund you. Sure. It's just like with this issue of, what's this? I forgot. My thought has now run away.
Yeah, no, we're just like throwing.
Like we're just
we're just like, well, let's distress, let's debrief, let's vent, because I mean that's what
I've thought about it. It's like those people think that the pipeline is like, okay, you graduate your junior degree, honors, masters, PhD. But what about the women that join the academy as a second career?
Sure.
Or later on.
Yeah.
In their life. What happens then? Like you join at 45, for instance. What happened to those later on in the life course?
Yeah.
So it really problematizes the issue of the pipeline. What are we talking about the pipeline? But the pipeline, just because some people are saying it's broken, because even the funding for the pipeline, when it is there, there's a particular expectation and certain disciplines that are being funded, and what type of people are being funded. It's quite political. So it's difficult.
Oh, tough times. Tough times. I think you've kind of like taken us through this journey in what you've spoken about, in like bringing feminism back home to South Africa. You've spoken about, the dynamics that we have here, like us even talking about NRF and talking about the murder that happened on our campus, first ever femicide within, our institution. You've kind of brought it back home, and I think that's kind of like where I want you to take us now. What is the role that African feminism, specifically in our South African context, what role does it have to play, and how do we use, the principles that you've told us about African feminism to kind of deal with this monster that we have right now, which is gender-based violence and femicide? What do we do? Like, how does it work?
I think African feminism and other forms of feminism have existed for centuries.
Yeah.
It's been like, I think in South Africa for over 30, 40 years now of scholarship, work of scholarship of women have been writing and putting their thoughts and words into paper. Most which is located within academic spaces. I think, in terms of reach and what's this? How do we? I always ask myself, how do we reach the normal person? Because we have this privilege of the academy. We've got this language and whatever. How do we reach the lady there is reading, who's just sitting there in her house? How do we teach her what African feminism is, but more importantly, I think the state has a great deal to play when it comes to addressing these types of social issues. But what happens in a patriarchal state and a racist colonial state is that there will be a perpetuation of these types of violences in the society. It's because it's Black Death. No one cares about that. Okay. That's what settler colonialism is, you know, because not so long ago they were saying there's a genocide of white farmers, and there's nothing like that in South Africa. So can you see that when a certain body dies, it's viewed with exceptionalism, that, oh my God, everyone must go mad. But every day we are faced with Black Death. And it seems like it's the society. We've normalized. Yeah, the society has even become so desensitized to it. Like, it's like when you scroll your Facebook, you read a story about someone that got stabbed or it's like you even feel nothing.
Yeah, you're like, all in a day's work in South Africa. I mean, we hear that everyone does, not every minute or every couple of seconds or whatever. So, I mean, we're like...
And that's what violence does. That's what power does. You know, they say throw the baby in the water and see if it swims. Yeah. That's what power does. It conceals. It pretends like, oh, we don't know what's going on. Oh, no, civil society is not willing to participate. Or no, we've implemented this policy, it's not working. Or no, we've put this amount of money and we have programs. I don't know when people, particularly the state agencies, will learn that we are taking ideas from the West in terms of policy implementation and policy writing. We are taking researchers from the West and we're just like, no, here's the solution. Or we are doing our own research, but we are implementing theoretical frameworks and methodologies that don't really fit quite neatly the South African situation, or that will understand the particularities of this context. So that's why we always it's like it's a dog chasing its tail. We never really get to the bottom of what the problem is, even though we all have a clue. We all know what the problem is, but the how do we eliminate it? Not in a patriarchal state. It's not going to happen because at the end of the day, men will protect their privilege, and if they decide what's important, Black woman death to them is not important. They've got other important things to think about. For instance, Cyril Ramaphosa said today that he feels like he must concede that colored, Indian and white communities have been ignored in South Africa post 1994, of which maybe that's his own personal opinion. But at the end of the day, in the townships, there's death every day. There's death every. What's the worst thing that can happen to anyone is to die.
Or even live like below the human inherent dignity that you must have, because if we go to the townships, the level of the quality of life, yes, it may not have been death, but I'm as good as. I mean, if you drive past Central, look at how many of our women, Black women like ourselves, are in the streets selling themselves as a service. How many of people that look like us are sleeping on the street? They're not dead, but what's the quality of life?
They're the indigent of society. It's like they're ghosts. They're invisible. People just...
we're like, well, yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I've got somewhere to go, so I need to get to where I need to get to.
Exactly. So it's that desensitization, it's that cruelty, and actually it's just individualism that has just infiltrated the ways of life. It comes with the neoliberal ideology, of course, which is also here in the university. We are not groups, apparently we are individuals, and yet nobody gets treated like an individual. You're part of a group. So those are the contradictions as to what is happening here. The university is now entrepreneurial, have to make money for it to survive. You're not producing research, then okay, go do some teaching. then you do that, you stay stagnant for 10 years, you're still in the same position. They say there's the adjunct professorship, which is the mommy track, apparently. It's called the mommy track. That, oh, well, new moms, it has to go there. It's like a road to nowhere. You're really. And, you know, us people that are teaching at the bottom, they say it's the female ghetto.
Please don't say this about us. Please, we are friends about what you do. Don't tell us when the ghetto child.
They say it's a female ghetto. Because that's where the ghetto is. That's where the poverty is.
Yeah, the scraps. Like, nobody wants to do that. So at least you say
the female. Yes.
Okay, I see you. I feel you.
Whether you like it or not, we are in the female ghetto.
Sure. Wow.
So,
yeah. Hurt, it hit the soul. But yeah, you're. So what do we do about this, Qhama? What do we do? Like, what are the specific African feminist organizations in our country? How do we mobilize? Like, what must we do? Knowledge production. You've spoken about this, about reaching the women in Zweden, about, you know, getting our knowledge out. But you also, you know, you've spoken about how our knowledge is mostly in academic writing, which means there's a jargon there. There's that disconnect. So what do we have to do?
I think feminist organizing has been there for the longest time. Like, I think when feminist organizing becomes visible when, like, there's a particular outrage of something, and then now the feminist organizing comes.
We take to the streets.
Yes, you know, the feminist organizing comes into play. But activism has always been there, and I think it's one of the things that have made us progress as the feminist movement up until this particular stage. But I think one of the things that we need to do is to be more, what can I say, to go into those communities, because they are not going to come to us. Believe me, they are not just going to come to us. So I think one of the things is to go into those communities, but to get those types of programs or get those types of organizing off the ground, we need what? Money. Right. We can't just do it. We need money. So we need a type of leadership that's going to invest in those types of initiatives to be able to do. But I'm also against this whole thing, like a soup kitchen sort of vibe. I'm not quite a fan of it, because the way that particularly government views initiative is that they go in there and they hand out t-shirts and they hand out food and they bring one or two speakers who speak there, and that's their initiative. Right. You know, it's not real deep theoretical deep knowledge or deep structural intervention. Unfortunately, at grassroots level, we're not going to be able to infiltrate the system. The only way to infiltrate the system is to occupy the system. Okay. So we need an organization or a type of leadership that is going to prioritize and understand the importance of women in the society. I was making an example in class this morning. I said, who is the first person that spoke to you as a baby? Sure. It's your mom. Right? When they're breastfeeding you, they're talking to you. So
even before you're born, because remember there's that connection where it's like they can even hear your heartbeat. So from that moment, they're hearing you, they feel you. There's nobody else that's felt you and you felt them, like that connection.
So it's like when your mom is pregnant, they're speaking. You are hearing the vibrations of their voice in the stomach, although you can't hear what you're saying. When you're bored, she starts talking to you. That's language acquisition. That is your mom transmitting knowledge and a language to you. Literature, the Bible. It's usually the grannies that make us read the Bible by force. It's the grannies that make us read the Bible by force. The funerals. Who is there? It's the woman. What are they doing? They're singing. That's orature. That's literature in the form of oral transmission of knowledge, because we don't just know those songs. Right. We learn those songs with time. And the thing is, with oral performance, which is singing and reading and writing and all of that, I think there's been a hierarchy of knowledge as well as to things that are oral, poetry, singing, as forms of knowledge have been relegated to non-knowledge or primitive. And that came with capitalism and modernity.
Right, yeah.
Came the printing press with capitalism. Something that you cannot write is not knowledge. If you can't write it, then it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Of which we take things like African proverbs, legends, folk tales, all those things are indigenous knowledge systems that have nurtured our society to be what it is. But now all of a sudden we're prioritizing paper and a book.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of us feel lost as well, because custom, as you said, it was indigenous knowledge. So if you don't have the connection to that custom, that knowledge, you feel lost. And I think that's why maybe for us as a continent, South Africa as a country, we're so violent because we're lost. We don't know who we are anymore. We don't know where we come from, and as such, we don't know where we're going.
Yeah, I think also the system or the establishment invests in that non-knowledge.
Right.
Because that's what keeps things going. That's what perpetuates the system. That's why then when you come into a classroom and you teach African history, where people come from, what happened for us to be at this point, then you get certain groups of students saying that, no, you're a racist.
Yeah, well, what was interesting for me, I taught intro to law. So it kind of also speaks about like custom, going back to how legal systems were formed in our traditional South African context before colonization. And I remember there was a group of students who were like, why do I need to be here? There's also customary law, the martial. I'm like, why do I need to learn this? Like, why is this important? And you're like, wow.
Yeah, because I mean, we have also been psychologically damaged as well with this process of, the erasure of our knowledge.
Yeah.
First they erase your language, they erase your knowledge, they erase your practices, they erase the discourse, which is the writing, the talking and everything. And then they come with their own things, and then that's what you know. You don't know anything that happened before that. The next thing you know, your language becomes extinct.
Right.
And I've actually become concerned because my 4-year-old is like I'm like, I don't want the language to get lost. But the thing is, most of the time they're in school. What am I supposed to do? That's one of the quagmires that we are in, and I'm thinking like maybe I need to get like a tutor like on the side so that the language doesn't get lost. Because with time, the languages will just be finished, like they will just get completely lost. And I think also with Xhosa literature and indigenous literatures from different languages, they've also been relegated to non-knowledge.
Yeah.
I was actually telling my students, as people like Esekedi, they've been doing sociology for the longest of times, but nobody considers him a sociologist because apparently sociology originated in the West or in Europe. There's a founding father apparently.
Yeah.
So that's how they start with erasing everything and the image of what knowledge should look like. Actually, the person that invented electricity is an African person. But if you go on Google, they tell you something else. So people need to understand those things, that don't be oblivious to it. It's happening. It's continuing to happen, and people are sleeping. And sometimes to such an extent that people are also complicit in their own oppression as well.
Sure.
Because they're like, no, how can a black man invent electricity?
It's true. It is. That is true. I think there was this documentary about the African American women that were part of the first mission to go to space.
Yeah.
And I was and you see it in that, like the way it was. You do the groundwork and all of that, but automatically we erase you from the process. We take the proceeds and then tweak one or two things, put my name on it, and then it's
That's what's happening with even the scholarships in Africa.
That's true.
They come with W.E. Mellon scholarship, whatever, some MasterCard prestigious scholarship. They take the best of the best invest in Africa. They give them money, take you to school, and then after that, they give you a nice life in the United States or wherever, and then they bring somebody from inside to come and learn what it is that you are doing. So you end up teaching that person what you know, and then it's a process of extraction, and then after they're done with you, they don't no longer need you.
Sure.
Then they're like, okay, our relationship has come to an end, and then what are you going to do after that? They've stolen your idea, and you're not going to get credit for it. And for the fact that you accepted their money for you to study, you have signed away your rights to your idea.
Yeah. Once you've received, which is also the thing that I was talking about with friends of how we need to be careful even when we attend research conferences or research workshops. You get there and you're enthusiastic and you're sharing your ideas of where you've gone with stuff, and you haven't published yet, mind you, and people are there and they're like,
taking notes.
And then 1, 2, 3, when you're ready, oh, it's published already, your PhD already belongs to someone else. So it's there.
It's cultures of extraction, cultural imperialism, all of that, they all work together to form this big bad monster that Africa has to always be at the back every time.
Yeah, no, you can't come up with things for yourself. You don't have the capabilities.
The thing is, we're functioning as individuals. If we could come as a collective, they always invest in that. You see, the establishment, you guys must be individuals. You mustn't be a collective, because once you become a collective, it's too much. It's too much. You're gonna get organized. You're gonna start getting ideas, and then when you get ideas, you're gonna overthrow the system. You're gonna overwhelm the system. But no, if you fight as individuals, they just pluck you out. They squash you one bag at a time.
It's actually funny because this morning I was listening to just the update regarding the Brexit summit, and one of the guests on the program, it was on the news, was speaking about how South Africa needs its Western counterparts and blah 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 blah. I was like, need them for what? We need our Western. You guys are flagging this, and we must expand BRICS, and yes, South Africa at least was the last one that was put in, and blah blah. But when you're talking about you don't give it the same vibes. It doesn't get the same level of publicity. When you're talking about SADC, it's like, but you need your Western counterparts.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I think I would say, like, I always find my ideas so ridiculous, but after some time I was like, no, but that makes sense. And I was saying, what if let's say the economy collapsed today, and what are we gonna do? We're gonna be the first people, the first lambs to the slaughter. Is going to be us, because why? We went to the United States, the IMF and the World Bank. We said we wanted 500 billion. They gave us. They know that we will never be able to pay that money with interest. So it's a lifetime debt until. But in exchange for what? For continued extraction of resources and certain advantages to the West for that 500 billion. But let's say the economy collapses and someone decides that the dollar is worth nothing. We will have nothing. Even if we have the 500 billion here, we will have nothing, because it will be declared to be worth nothing. But they have centuries of gold reserves that they have been extracting for centuries. They have centuries.
Which they base their currency on, which is why it's so strong. Because money is paper. You have
it's
to
paper, like it's
back it up on something.
But the dollar is the only currency that, even the euro is not backed up on anything. On anything. So they just tell you that it's worth this. There are people that are controlling these markets or whatever. So if it's worth nothing tomorrow, we are the first people, the lambs to slaughter. Because at the end of the day, we'll only have a piece of paper left. We'll have nothing. Resources under the ground take time to accumulate, right? So the more you mine it, the more it depletes. And when it's depleted, it needs time to, the earth to recover and make that resource again. We will be the first lambs to slaughter. Because what happened to also that 500 billion? Where is it? No one knows where it is.
Hey, now that one, that's a story to have over lunch, supper, and even weeks and years to come. That one is a tough one. But I think just in closing, you've spoken about what feminism is, what African feminism is. You've spoken about us being the first to the slaughter, which is why we need to wake up to, as you said, the systems that are around us, how they're maneuvering us and how they're controlling us. And we need to be conscious, as you've spoken about consciousness. We need to be conscious, but you said being conscious is not enough. We need to go above and beyond that and actually take position and act. Okay, so you've unpacked that for us so nicely, and you've kind of also demystified the concept that feminism is gender specific. You've mentioned for us that anyone can be a feminist. It's friendship. It's for everyone, and it's for the betterment of all of us. Our good sister Qhama has spoken about how we all should be feminists for the main concepts that you have unpacked for us. Should we all be feminists?
Well, I'm not the one to impose anything.
Maybe we need to impose at this rate because hey, we're going to the camps. But yeah,
I think people need to stop learning what feminism is from Twitter.
Right.
Stop that. Because I think that's what's blocking people. Stop learning it from TikTok. Stop learning it from Twitter. Stop learning it from Facebook. Go on Google Scholar and type, what is African feminism? You'll get readings there that will tell you what it is, why it's there, and who it is for. Just because it says feminine or has something to do with feminist or feminine energy, it doesn't mean that men cannot be part of the project, because we need each other. We can't fight this emancipation journey without them. So we want them to tag along with us, but they need to give up something, and that which is their advantage of taking part in being complicit in a patriarchal system. Sure. Of which it's difficult to persuade people to let go of that. Because honestly, it has served them so well. So,
still a long way to go.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think this has contributed. Remember what our goal is. We need to contribute to the body of knowledge. We need that original contribution, which is what is original, which is when we start going back to that. But we have contributed in this discussion, and you've spoken about how we need to do the groundwork. We need to go out into the community. We need to do the work that brings that unity back, that brings that value of the human being back, and also shake up things. And I think this discussion is shaking up a few things.
I think it's going to shake the table.
I mean, unfortunately, fortunately, that is the work that we do. And specifically in ETP, the Portfolio for Engagement and Transformation, that's what we're doing. We're shaking up things. So I think in our different spaces that we occupy, this is our task. We have to all do the work. You've spoken about it being a collective. So I think any parting words for us, any advice on the movement ahead? Because this is a movement.
Yes, I think my parting words would be, if we are going to put a band-aid over a bleeding sore, what happens is that it's going to get infected. And unfortunately, when you rip out that plaster, then the pus will just spill over, which it needs to be cleaned. So that's what we're doing. It's already boiled over. The sore is already boiled over. The deaths of every day in the townships, every day in the communities, the cruelty that continues to happen in social institutions, is that sore bubbling over with infection. So what needs to happen is that we need to clean it to get to the root cause. Unfortunately, we have to be truthful to ourselves. There's no way of us to brush over this thing or have particular reservation, sugarcoating for people not to be hurt. This thing of us sugarcoating and trying to avoid certain conversations has been hurting us instead. So I think we just need to be honest. Let's keep it real. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, guys, you've heard it. Qhama says, tell the truth. Be honest, child. Be honest. Tell the truth. So yeah, let us go on and tell the truth.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming.
We're putting truth to power.
Yeah.
Speaking
Yeah.
truth to power.
She has not braced us for the consequences that come with telling the truth. She just said tell the truth and be honest. But beware, there are consequences that come with telling the truth and be honest, but it has to be done.
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming today. Hopefully we unpack these things again in future.
Yes.
But yeah, let us breathe the air of honesty as we depart. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you again next time, guys. It's the EPSI Chats.